Happy Thursday, everybody. Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. Another episode of Drank and Champagne, Preakness edition. I'm joined as always by Mr. Champagne, Andrew Champagne. How you doing, Andrew?
Josh, I have a very important question for you, and this might be the most important question that I ask on this entire show, not just this version, but maybe from the start of the show to its finish, whenever that is. Josh, are you ready to get your preak on? I'm going to take that as a no, so I'm going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting tonight. That's okay. That's okay. I'm used to having to do the heavy lifting and getting no credit, yet the second I say anything remotely controversial, here comes horse racing Twitter. Pretty much, yes. But on a serious note, it is Preakness week, and even with the rain that has been battering the Mid-Atlantic area, I'm excited for these 2 days of racing. Saturday's card is obviously very good, but we're going to talk a little bit about the Friday card too. And Josh, I think the Friday undercard is very, very interesting. I think there are a lot of fun value propositions. Really looking forward to being able to see how those races shake out on the tote board and how they play out on the racetrack.
Yeah, I know you had mentioned earlier before we got on that you really, really like the Friday card. So I'm excited to dive into the Friday card. I'll probably take a look sometime tomorrow night. Just been really, really busy with work, so I haven't had a chance to really dive into stuff. Actually, tonight, we're recording this maybe about a half hour later than we normally do. I actually had a volleyball game. I'm playing in a league now on Wednesday nights, Andrew, and normally our games are, I think, 6:30, 7:30, or 8:30. Games last about an hour, and we're done. But a friend of mine, old coworker of mine, she texts me and she goes, "Hey, me and a couple of people are going to go play trivia on Wednesday night. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Oh, I can't. I play volleyball at this bar. Can't do it." And so she goes, "Huh, let me ask everybody if they'd rather go watch you play volleyball than go play trivia." I'm like, "What? Why in the world would you want to come watch me play volleyball?" Sure enough, she shows up with 3 of my coworkers and another ex-coworker. So I had a cheering section apparently for volleyball. I didn't hear them at all.
Cheering section.
I did not hear them at all. They were just like
Oh.
they were drinking. They were having a good time. But invariably we ended up staying much later than I normally would. Had a couple beers with them and had some fun catching up. So we're getting to this a little late. So really, all I've had time to look at is what we're going to be talking about today, which is the Pimlico Dirt Pick 5. I will say that Pimlico has been off to a great start to the meet. With what was it, the first race of the meet being declared a no contest,
and then it happened again.
Look, if you don't like that, you don't like horse racing. Okay. I'm just saying, if you don't like that, you don't like horse racing. So
one thing before we get started, and this is absolutely no snark, this is Dan Illman's first Preakness doing communications for Maryland Horse Racing. Dan is one of the all-time good guys, and I will always root for him, for his team, and for anyone or anything that they are associated with. Seeing what happened with the starting gate 2 days in a row, that broke my heart. Because I know there are good people down there that give a significant damn about horse racing's future. And that was a gut punch for it to happen once. I don't know how that's allowed to happen twice. That's for people above my pay grade. I may very well get direct messages from someone saying to stop talking about it because that's horse racing's answer to most problems. But hopefully they've got everything sorted out. We're going to need to deal with some weather over the course of the next several days at Old Hilltop. That's the reason that I suggested the all dirt pick 5. It covers 2 days. There are a bunch of big spots. We'll talk about the Preakness, which is the payoff leg, but there's also some other graded stakes races included in that. And as a bonus, we don't have to worry about anything changing surfaces because of the weather. So that's what I figured we get some mileage out of. And it's a little bit different, I think, from what a lot of other podcasts out there will give you. I don't see a lot of people looking at this sequence. And Josh, I think that's a mistake because this is a 12% takeout sequence with some big fields and some spots where I think you can single with some confidence. And also some spots, I think, where you can dig deep, play for a price. It's a good wagering sequence.
Yeah, the gate malfunctioning twice in 2 days is almost like a rider not riding to the wire twice in like a month. You know, like you never see that happen before.
Did the gate get an award between the first time it did it and the second time it did it?
Yes, it did.
Horse
The
racing in a
most
nutshell, folks.
best starting gate in Pimlico, I believe is what award it got. Um, Gotta love horse. How can you not be romantic about horse racing?
How can you not be? By the way, on a note before we wind up diving into this sequence, and I don't want to dilly dally too much about this, but I do need to turn this into the On the Wrong Lead book club for just a moment because a couple of days ago in the good old U.S. Postal Service, I got this I'm holding up right here. It is a book called Death of a Racehorse by a woman named Katie Bo Lillis. If any of you out there know Katie's name, it may be because she's a reporter for a little television network known as CNN. Before she was Katie Bo Lillis at CNN, she was Katie Bo Williams working for the Saratoga Special the summer I worked for the Saratoga Special. She's wonderful. She is a hell of a writer. I will say that much. And if you see this in your bookstore, go buy it. It is not an easy read. It is not a short read. I guarantee you, you're going to learn something, and it's well worth your investment, both as far as money goes and as far as time goes. I put this out on Twitter. I less so read books and more so devour them. I've got bookcases upon bookcases of stuff, and I have no idea where any of that's going to go. But this is a book that is absolutely worth your time. I'll hold it up again once more. Death of a Racehorse, An American Story. Katie Bo Lillis is the author.
All right, let's. Why don't we jump into this pick five here? It's going to start on Friday. We're going to start with the Miss Preakness, which is a 6 furlong race for 3-year-old fillies, grade 3, and yeah, we got a nice full field here of 13. Your morning line favorite is going to be the 12 Vodka with a Twist. 4-1 on Stunner. You get 5-1 on Echo Sound, 6-1 on Long Neck Paula and Family. You get double digits on the rest. Andrew, I'll let you start. It seems like you got like half the field in this race, so I'll let you get here.
In fact, I do have nearly half the field. I'm going 6 deep. This, to me, was the most confounding race of the sequence. A lot of it depends on your opinion of Vodka with a Twist, horse number 12 in the program. Based on past accomplishments, she's supposed to be far shorter than the 7-2 morning line price. And I think she may very well drift down because if you look at her career, she hasn't done anything wrong. They tried her going 2 turns last year. All she did was run second in a little race called the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. She ran in the Starlet. She was a beaten favorite that day behind Tenma. She got beat by Tenma again in the Santa Anita Oaks. The question with Vodka with a Twist is, have we seen the best she has to offer? I do like the fact that she comes in off of a series of excellent workouts. I think she's fairly well met. I got to wonder why Mike Smith is on this horse as opposed to somebody like, say, a Flavian Pratt who rode her to victory last year in the debutante. We know she does like a muddy track. She's 2 for 2. I'm using her, but it's one of those instances where I don't think you can feel overly confident in Vodka with a Twist because she's sort of plateaued. Is that usual effort good enough to win? Probably. Is it good enough to justify the price she'll be on the win end? Probably not. At least I don't think so. In addition to that one, I'm using horses 1, 4, 5, 6, and 9. So again, almost exactly half the field. If you're looking for an alternative, maybe the 6 Stunner, who's 4-1 on the morning line. Last time out ran second in the Beaumont, going 7 furlongs. That was out of the Beard course, so figure 7 furlongs in about 70 yards. She went pretty fast early on. 7 furlongs might be just a little bit further than she truly wants to go. When she's right, she is a very good sprinter. She may well be the speed of the speed. I notice you have an A by her. I also notice you have an A by Family, horse number 5, and I thought that one was interesting because this was a private purchase since the last outing at Turfway Park, where she ran a good second, beaten just ahead. Safi Joseph has her now, and I would really like her, but she's only worked twice since that purchase. It's entirely possible that she's a horse that just doesn't need a lot in the way of morning training. It's entirely possible that she's been galloping well enough to where she just doesn't need an insane amount of workouts, and 2 workouts is enough. But that hits me as a little bit light, especially for a horse making the debut on dirt. We know that Turfway Park horses can run on dirt. Hi, Chase Sessoms and the little pig boy angle. How you doing? But that's another one that, yes, while I'm using, I can't well be too enthusiastic at the likely price. If there is an overlay, let's look at number one Hollygrove, who's 20 to 1 on the morning line. When you get up to that horse in the past performances there for our YouTube audience, do me a favor, Josh, cross out that November 1st effort with that beautiful red pen tool that you have. Okay. Cross that out, and what do you have?
Horse hasn't missed a trifecta.
Exactly. Now, the rail is a little bit of a concern. I'm not quite sure she's quick enough, but there is some off track pedigree in here. You see a mare by Orb. Orb won a little race called the Kentucky Derby over a muddy track. That's not a problem for me. Whit Beckman is a very good trainer. She's another that comes in off a series of pretty strong workouts. I don't think that horse should be 20 to 1. I will definitely be using her, but this is a race where I didn't have a lot in the way of super strong opinions. I spread in here, and I'm just trying to get to the rest of the sequence where I do have some stronger opinions.
Yeah, I'm only going too deep in here. I'm going to be using the 6 Stunner, which I think you already talked about.
Yep.
I see Flavian Pratt get aboard. This is a horse that's been working extremely, extremely well since that April 2nd in the Beaumont, and I just think this might be a case where this is just a horse that's been going in against better at this point. This horse that I think is going to appreciate the cutback here. So yeah, I like this horse cutting back. This is a horse that's shown speed at 6.5, so I think 6. It could be the speed of the speed here. Gets Flavian Pratt aboard, and he's just he's the best jock going right now. He's a master at understanding pace, and yeah, if he sees the inside horses really, really go, I think, he understands pace well enough that if he needs to back off a little bit, he will with this one. And they have tried, rating with this horse before. Whether or not that's what the horse wants to do, I'm not sure, but he really just doesn't really give a bad ride. I really like the 6 Stunner here. I mean, obviously you got that bullet work. Last time out 46-3. Brad Cox, I think, has got this one primed here. So really, really like it. And also, if this does turn up super muddy, Gervin is only 21% in the mud. I mean, and then you got a hard spun dam. So another breeding that really, really does enjoy the slop. So I don't think that that's going to be an issue here. It does have a nice second on an off track in last time in the Beaumont. Yeah, you also mentioned that my other pick, the 5 Family, and I don't really know what to think pace wise with this horse, right? Because this is a horse that's shown a ton of speed at Turfway Park, and just like we talk about, turf speed and dirt speed don't necessarily translate, right? I mean, synthetic is the same thing. You got to treat it as a different surface. However, I do like the fact that C2 Racing, saw fit to privately purchase this horse, and Safi is putting this horse in a very, very aggressive spot. On Brisnet, the speed figures look good, look competitive here, and we've just seen these turfway horses come to dirt and still run very well. So I'm interested to see how this one runs. I mean, if I have them both marked down as A's, I guess this would technically be type like a B type almost for me, but I'll end up using them both equally. But those are the only two I'm going to use in the spot. I think, like you, I could probably use half the field, maybe even more, if I were really like dead set on, hey, I need to get out of this leg by hell or high water. But there were a couple of short prices I'm trying to get around, and I spread in another race, so I had to pick my battle here. So I'm deciding to go narrow here. If I were to go any deeper in this race, I mean, I don't want any part of the 12 vodka with a twist. And I think if you go back, this horse has run its best races sprinting, but there's something about horses that at 2 show a ton of promise and start to kind of tail off at the end of their season. I always kind of feel like those horses never really get back to that, they're kind of like precocious start, right? And this is one that showed brilliance pretty early in its career, and they stretched the horse out. And I'm not saying that they necessarily ruined the horse, but I just think that the horse is going to have to overcome a bit, even coming back to the sprint, and you're just not going to get, I think, the right price to to take a shot with that, right? I mean, vodka with a twist, right? Yeah, if this vodka with a twist runs back to, her Sorrento, or her Del Mar debutante, I'm that race probably wins here, but those races were 4 races ago, and they've already stretched this horse out and are kind of going back to, I think, plan B. And I just don't feel great taking a short price, doing that, especially going from 2 to 3, right? They tried the Santa Anita Oaks, and that didn't work out on a real fast pace there. So, I don't really want anything to do with a 12 in this spot. I mean, I was a little bit interested in the 2 volleyball princess.
That's not a hunch play or anything.
No, it's not a hunch play. You know, I thought that this was kind of an interesting horse. Um, came third in that Beaumont, albeit was pretty far back. 10 lengths off of it. But that aqueduct race, the Ruthless, looks really really good on Briz. This is an inside drawn speed horse. Is a horse that has won from off the pace at Parks, and is a horse that's been working pretty well at Parks. So I thought that this was kind of an interesting horse in here. But this is, like I said, this is another horse that's kind of gone backwards in its last 2 starts. So, but unlike Vodka with a twist, this is one we're getting 20 to 1 on, right? We're not getting 7 to 2. So I'm much more forgiving, right, on a horse that has a race that fits, that we got to go back for, but we're getting a great price. So, if I get scratches later on, like this is like more of like a C type for me. I don't have this written on my ticket, but this is if I were to kind of go further, I think the 2 volleyball princess is kind of where I would look at.
I've got 3 things here, 2 of which pertain to Volleyball Princess. First, I would like that horse much more on a fast track than on the muddy or sloppy track we're likely to see on Friday. If for some reason the track dries up, I think Volleyball Princess has a chance to run a pretty big race. The second thing with Volleyball Princess is, how often do we see a North Carolina bred in the form? That's rare right there.
Yeah.
The third thing, and this pertains to vodka with a twist, and this is going to go to a friend of the On the Wrong Lead Network, Keith Bush, who is very big on fair odds. And I think that's the key point with vodka with a twist. If vodka with a twist is 5 to 1 or 6 to 1, we're talking about her completely differently. At that point, we're saying, okay, vodka with a twist may have needed the race in the Santa Anita Oaks. She cuts back to a sprint. She's run well sprinting in the past. We know she likes the mud. Yeah, sure, I could see a play here, but she's not going to be 5 to 1 or 6 to 1. You're probably going to have to stomach somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 2, 3 to 1. And for a win play, that's a little short for me, especially in a field of 13. And Josh, this is a decent field for the level, I think. This is no cakewalk.
Yeah, and honestly, not to get too into morning lines and stuff like that. I think vodka with a twist ends up your second choice. I see vodka with a twist kind of staying at that 7 to 2 price. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Stunner goes off at 3 to 2, or not 3 to 2, sorry, 3 to 1. 5-2 as kind of your favorite in this spot. Just I could see people looking at like I said, the form and just like I said, you got that BC Juvenile that looks great, right? Ran second in that race to Immersive, but this is 6 furlongs, right? And what has that horse kind of done since that race? Did that
Mhm.
take a lot out of the horse? Yeah, I think Vodka with Twist is probably end up being your second choice. I'd be much more interested in, like I said, the prices you kind of listed,
Yeah.
5-1, 6-1. Like yeah, like that's where I would take a shot with Vodka with a Twist, but I don't at her likely price. I don't want any piece of it. But
Sure.
all right, let's move on here. The Pimlico Special, mile and 3/16 on the main track, grade 3 here for 3-year-olds and up on the main track, like all the rest of these races. We do have a big scratch, Andrew, you said was reported earlier today in Pyrenees, the 7, your morning line favorite. And I didn't know about that until obviously after I had already handicapped this. However, was not a horse I was going to use. So for me, that kind of hurts my value, I think, a little bit in
It
here.
hurts the value of everybody because if you like Pyrenees, you were probably singling. And if you didn't like Pyrenees, you were licking your chops. Now the odds on everybody in the field sort of come tumbling down. Star of Wonder is now your 7-2 morning line favorite. Phileas Fogg is your 5-1 second choice. And Josh, I'm going to throw this to you because I noticed a big ol' A right by Phileas Fogg. And I'm not at all surprised by that because when I was looking through the form, that looked like a Josh horse to me.
Yeah, this is the type of horse I think that, I'm looking at the form here. This is a horse that's shown a ton of speed, both on the turf, on the dirt, right, in the mud. Uh, just very, very versatile horse. But what I like about this horse is it seems like they ran this horse last time out in the Excelsior. They stretched it out, going a mile and a quarter, and he just happened to run his best race, going a mile and a quarter. And now we're going a mile and 3/16, right? We're basically going a mile and a quarter. We're going half furlong less. But this is a horse I know that's going to want the distance. Has run its best race, going those longer distances. And what I also like is while this is a horse that has, for the most part, been on the lead, last time out, kind of, was bumped at the start, kind of, was shuffled back, ended up being a couple of lengths or numerous lengths off of it. I mean, still sitting in second. However, still just kind of ran his race. Kendrick, was patient. Didn't mind too much the fact that the horse kind of got shuffled back. Got the horse in position. By a second call was ahead by numerous lengths, and ended up winning by open lengths. Right. So yeah, I think that if it does get really really funny on the front end, and they outbreak Kendrick, which is very very hard to do, by the way. I do think that this is a horse that's been able to overcome, kind of a bad trip. And like I said, it is a horse that's run very very well at the distance. So I love this horse, Phileas Fogg in here. I have that as one of my A's. The other horse I have as an A is the 3 Encino. And I mean, this is another 3 cherry horse here. But on top of the fact that this is a horse that just seems to want to get on the lead and win on the lead, this is a horse that's also got a ton of mud pedigree. And like I said, we've already kind of talked about, or maybe we haven't talked about it too much, but 50% chance of rain the next couple days over here at Pimlico. And if there's a ton of moisture in the track, I think Encino is one of those horses. Like you see Nyquist, you see Bernardini on the bottom. I mean, this is a horse that's going to, I think, relish being in the mud. Has got one run in good going at fairgrounds, and won that race going wire to wire. Not necessarily the most flashy race, but this is another horse I think that you saw that Kentucky Cup Classic. right? Went a mile and the eighth and seemed to run a little bit better. So I think it's another one. I think just stretching out is going to be good for this horse. So those are my two A's, the 1 and the 3. I do have two B's as well. The 8 Star of Wonder, probably not going to be used as a B just because of the fact of the price. I think I think it's kind of tough to swallow. Hey, I'm going to use the short price favorite as a B, but this is one that I just thought is lightly raced and is a horse that's kind of taken a step forward. Every time it's gone. I mean, granted, it ran a 7 furlong race there, but as they added distance, the horse kind of took a little bit of step forward, took a little step forward here. You see Flavian gets aboard, who's been aboard for 2 of this horse's 4 wins. Like to see that. And I did see the possibility of maybe there being a little bit too much pace inside. So I think Star of Wonder is kind of one of those horses I think is going to be pressing, probably sitting 3 lengths off of it. And maybe if it does go nuclear up front, is one that could pick up the pieces. And I mean, if you want a horse to pick up any kind of pieces, I think you got to use the 9 Red Route 1. And right, this is a horse that has run a couple of very, very good races. But, if you're not familiar with Brisnet PPs, there's these plus and minuses here kind of give you an idea of what Brisnet kind of thought of the pace. If they're big numbers with a plus, they think it's a fast pace. If they're numbers with a minus, they think it's slow pace. The Essex, you got a plus 23, plus 15, and all you see is that horse close in for a nice win. The Tinsel, plus 22, plus 29, not necessarily the best, but, was able to close in a bunch of ground there. And then you kind of go back to the New Orleans Classic where you kind of got the same thing. They went 46-4 there, and Rosario was able to get that horse to go ahead and close and win. So this is a horse that's got multiple, graded stakes wins, closing into fast pace. And heck, even in the Cornhusker, when this horse closed into a slow pace. But yeah, I just think that this is a horse that just needs some pace in front of him, and I think he's going to get it in this race. Not saying that. I mean, I think the pace is going to hold together and probably win, but I do love using horses like this as a B in case something crazy does happen on the front and they go blazing. I think Red Route 1's has got a really, really good shot to kind of pick up the pieces if this thing falls apart. So I'm going to use my my A's in this race as the 3 Encino and the 1 Phileas Fogg, and then I'll use the 8 Star of Wonder and the 9 Red Route 1 as B's. Andrew, where did you land?
I landed on the horse I was pointing at as you were talking about it. I think this race falls apart. I think there's a lot of early speed. Phileas Fogg is probably going to go. Encino, we know, is going to go. Number 4, Awesome Aaron, is coming off of probably the best race he's ever run. He won that race on the front end. Number 6, Just Steel, has a little bit of speed. And I don't think Star of Wonder is going to be too far back either. I think we're going to see a very legitimate pace in the Pimlico Special, going a mile and 3/16. And the faster they go early, the better Red Route 1's chances figure to be. Unfortunately, we're not going to get 8-1 after the scratch of Pyrenees. I still think we're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 5-1 or 6-1. If you look at his PPs, he's sort of a strange horse. When he's bet, he doesn't run all that well. When he's not sent away as the favorite, he runs. And it's a really strange thing with this horse, but I think he's going to wind up getting the pace he needs, and I think he's going to come running. I root for horses like this. Red Route 1 is a 5-year-old by Gun Runner that's won a couple of graded stakes races. If these connections wanted to retire him somewhere, they could find a stud deal for him easily enough. He's already banked almost $2.2 million, and he's done it the hard way, running the grade 2, grade 3 level. I think Red Route 1 is going to be very difficult to hold off. He's my top pick, but I'm also going to use Phileas Fogg for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. One of the things that you didn't mention, though, is one of the most important, I think. He's 2 for 3 with a second in the mud. This is a horse that likes off tracks and is likely going to get one here. Kendrick Carmouche rode him brilliantly last time out. Been impressed by him this year. He got his 4,000th victory over the course of earlier this season. This is a horse that has a lot of early speed, and from the rail, you have to think the game plan is going to be to go. I think he might be a little faster than Encino is, and I don't think that's good news for Encino because if Phileas Fogg winds up establishing a position on the rail and winds up dictating terms from the jump, I think he could be pretty tough if he gets comfortable. I'm 1-9 in here. Red Route 1 is my top pick at a little bit of a price, hoping for, say, a 5-1, 6-1 shot that plays a little bit bigger in the multis. I do need to voice my one complaint with this sequence, and it's right here. I understand we have the Black Eyed Susan Preakness double. How is the Black Eyed Susan not part of this sequence?
Hmm.
I mean, given the way the fields shook out, and they had to establish this weeks in advance, they didn't really know. But which would you rather have in this sequence? Would you rather have the Black Eyed Susan, which I think is wide open, or the Sir Barton, which we have in this sequence and is probably going to be won, at least in our estimation, by a horse that's going to take a ton, and I mean a ton, of betting money?
I don't know why they card things the way they do.
I know they had to sort this out far in advance. And again, I give Pimlico and the organizers of the Preakness and this All Dirt Pick 5 a lot of credit. It's a very good wager. But it's one of those things where you look at the races and the sequences and you go, yeah, they probably want a do-over on that one if they could get it.
Race 3, the Chick Lang here. We're going to be going a 6 furlong distance for 3-year-olds, 150K here. And yeah, we got 11 horses in this race. Your morning line favorite is going to be the 8 1-900 at 7-2, 4-1 on Keep It Easy, 9-2 on Perfect Force, 6-1 on Faster Gator in Ancient World, 8-1 on Touchy, double digits on the rest. Andrew, I went 3 deep in here. You know, I think the race does start and stop with the morning line favorite here, 1-900. These are like I kind of look at the rest of these horses, and there's a couple of horses in here that I think maybe I've seen enough of. um, and I like this. I like seeing the new face in here, right? In the 8-1-900. Tom Morley trains this one, and Tom Morley's a guy that when he gets a horse going and he gets a horse going in the right way, sometimes it's tough to stop that horse. And this is a horse that took kind of 3 times to break its maiden, but broke its maiden very, very impressively last time out, winning by 7 lengths. Horse has been training very, very well since then. And gets Flavian Pratt aboard, and I know I've mentioned that a bunch of times already. Flavian, I'm sorry for all the mean things I said about you after Country House won.
You
But
were also very eager to bash him when he had that epic drought to start the Santa Anita meet either last year or the year before. We have the receipts.
Oh yeah, I know we do. It's funny. Like I always like, I'm always like nervous, like trying to like interview a jockey. I'm like, man, if only he heard any of the stuff I said about him. And you could basically name a jockey, except for Joel Rosario, because I love Joel Rosario. Like he's my own, like my own blood. But yeah, yeah, 1-900. I thought it looks really good in here. Right, it's an improving horse. Tom Morley trained. Pratt gets aboard. I don't think it I think everyone's going to look at this horse and be like, oh, this is a fresh face, right? Love that horse. My other A is going to be the 7, Faster Gator. And, this is a horse that, won 2 nice races at Laurel. And, they ran this horse in the Bayshore at Aqueduct. And, I don't really know if maybe they just went a little too long, right? This is a horse that wants to stay a little bit shorter. Horse ran great. Ran second by a head, right? Arnaldo Bocachica, if you're not familiar with, very, very good rider on mostly at Charlestown. Usually the leading rider there. And yeah, this horse is third off the layoff. Um, Anthony Ferrier is 24% third off the layoff. He's winning at 26% this year. And yeah, this is a horse that has just been working like a freight train since that aqueduct race. And I like the cutback here for this horse, just cutting back the 1 furlong. I like that Arnaldo's aboard because Arnaldo is very, very aggressive. And this is also another horse that we've talked about. I like seeing versatility, right? This is the horse on the one on the front end, one coming from off the pace in that optional claimer two back. So I think he's going to be able to kind of pick and choose like what he wants to do in this race. So really, really like the 7 Faster Gator. This is another one that I think has got that upward trajectory on speed figures. So I think he sits here really nice at 6 to 1. And for a bit of a price, the 4 Normandy Coast. We've talked about the weather, and they tried the Gotham two back. It's clear this horse did not want to go that far. They come back in the Palisades, going 5.5 in the slop, and this horse wins by open lengths. So was it the slop? Was it the cutback? I'm not sure, but guess what? He's probably going to get both in here. He's going to be running 6 furlongs, and he's probably going to get good to sloppy track. Gets Luis Saez aboard, who's one of the best jocks in the country. And yeah, this is like I said, this is the horse we've already seen being able to do it in the slop. Has run its best race in the slop. So if it does come up sloppy, is the horse that I'm going to want to use on as many tickets as possible. But those are the 3 horses I'm using here. I'm going to use the 8 1-900 is my top pick, the 7 Faster Gator is my other A, and the 4 Normandy Coast as a B. Andrew, where did you land?
As the great American Meatloaf once sang, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. We have 2 common horses, but Josh, I am dead set against number 8 900. This is a runner not just making his first start against winners of any kind, but you're looking at a horse that's never run without Lasix. That is a massive, massive move here. And you're looking at a horse doing this after breaking the maiden against a field at Aqueduct that wasn't any great shakes. Yes, the speed figures look good. If you like the fact that he ran second behind Colloquial 2 starts back, I can understand that. But this horse is going to take a lot of money based off of a last out effort that I think was inflated. And this is coming up against a field that, again, credit to Pimlico. This is a good field for the level. This isn't one of those $150,000 races that could be in non-winners of one other than allowance. We've seen fields like that at a bunch of tracks across the country. But I'm against 1 900 here. I think he's going to be wildly overbet. I don't think he's faced any adversity in any of his 3 starts, with the exception of his first start when you can argue he didn't break all that well. But even so, he had every chance to win and couldn't get the job done. I think he's an underlay. One of us is going to look pretty stupid after this race is run. Let's put it that way. But while I am using number 4 Normandy Coast and number 7 Faster Gator for the reasons that you mentioned, my A horse and my top pick is number 6, Keep It Easy. Keep It Easy at his best, I think, buries this field. If you look at the race he ran 2 back in the Ed Brown, he crushed that group. He won as impressively as you could ask a 2-year-old sprinter to do it, going 6.5 furlongs and 1:15.2. They brought him back off a break in the Fountain of Youth. I think the connections might have had some Derby fever there. And look, you have to try at some point. It's not like that was an overly difficult spot on paper. All it did was produce the Kentucky Derby winner and a horse that's going to take some money in the Preakness. I'm not holding that lack of effort against him. He's just not a 2-turn horse, which is kind of surprising given the pedigree. He's by hard spun out of an English Channel mare, which tells you he wants to go about 9 miles on turf, and they wound up with a dirt sprinter. This just in, folks, breeding is not an exact science. When I see an effort like the last out effort in the Fountain of Youth, and I see this horse running back, yes, the cutback in distance helps, but I need to look at the workouts. That most recent work on May 12th at Churchill, that's a really good work. 4 furlongs and 47 and 1. I think there's every chance Keep It Easy is back to his usual self. And if he is, I think he's going to be pretty tough to beat in here. I will have a couple of smaller tickets that zero in on him if he's anywhere close to that 4-1 morning line price. But I'll be going 4, 6, and 7 in here. I'm trying to beat the 8, 1, 900. I'm just not impressed.
All right. Let's move on to race 4, the Sir Barton, mile and 1/16 on the main track for 3-year-olds. And you said you're not impressed by the morning line favorite in race 3. Are you impressed by the morning line favorite in race 4?
Yes, and I'm not the only one because number 6 Invictus, back when he was a yearling, sold for $1.2 million. That's not a typo in the Brisnet form, folks. And if you look at the pedigree, there's a good reason for that. Buy into Mischief out of the mare Serengeti Empress, who was a freak. Won the Kentucky Oaks for Tom Amos, cut back and won a couple of big races going 7 furlongs. Invictus debuted, was sent away at odds of less than 3-1 in a loaded maiden race at Saratoga. That race was won by Chancer McPatrick. All he did was win the Hopeful and win the Champagne. That was a big, big race quality-wise. Invictus went early, didn't have anything left late. It's safe to assume something went wrong because we didn't see him in the afternoon again until April 8th. He came back and he jogged, winning by 2.5 lengths when he had every right to need a race. Lasix on, yes, I understand that. But you see a horse off that kind of a layoff, I don't think you're looking at a horse that was boosted up by the Lasix. I think you're looking at a horse that's been well meant every step of the way, and something went wrong in the debut. I find it very easy to draw a line through that debut effort. The recent workouts look sharp, comes in off a 5 furlong work in a minute flat. This horse has every reason to stretch out. Flavian Pratt sees fit to ride. And on top of that, the morning line sees this as a 2, possibly 3 horse race. Number 1, Crudo, is your 5-2 second choice on that morning line. Crudo got the candy ass trip of all candy ass trips last time out at Keeneland out of the Beard course. Josh, go up to Crudo, in the past performances there. What's that first quarter reading?
24 flat.
And he's loose. That race was over out of the gate. That horse was never going to get challenged. Draws the rail, and I think other horses in here are faster than Crudo is. I think he's bred to go 2 turns. I like the off-track pedigree being by Justify out of a deputy minister mare, but I certainly don't feel as confident in Crudo as I do in Invictus, who I think is incredibly well meant. The other horse that's a bit of a short price on the morning line is number 7, Him. And Him had what I thought was a perfect trip last time out in a similar spot at Oaklawn, and he was 4th beaten 2 lengths on that occasion. No thanks. I don't think he gets that perfect trip. I think he needs that perfect trip in this spot. Just no thanks, not for me. Give me Invictus, and give me Invictus as a single.
Yeah, I would single Invictus, but I did, you know, his mom had a bit of a bleeding problem, and the fact that the horse ran that well with Lasix and not that well without, just it just sticks in the back of my head maybe a little bit. So I think if the horse runs back to its last effort, everyone's running for second. But I am going to use a horse as a B. The number 9, Just a Fair Shake, is going to be my lone B in
He'll
here.
be running late.
He's going to be coming late, and I think is coming off of 2 very, very strong efforts in an optional claimer, and then in was it the Federico Tesoro or
Tessio.
Tessio? Thank you,
That
Tessio.
used to be the local prep for the Preakness in a big, big,
Mm,
big way. There were a couple of years where they moved the date around and it didn't serve that purpose. It's back where it belongs.
and this horse ran second off of Lasix in that race, and ran a pretty big Brisnet figure in that race. And just I talk about this a lot, right, with these 3-year-old horses, right? These uplining speed figures, right? This is a horse that just seems like he's progressively getting better, and maybe he's just getting good at the right time. So I think if I'm going to take a shot here, I'm looking at the pace here. Mr. Bogan, he wants to go. Him's going to want to be forwardly placed. Bear Claw Necklace is going to want to go. Crudo's going to want to go. So I think if there is going to be a horse that's going to be coming late, it's going to be the 9, Just a Fair Shake. So I'm going to use that horse as a B in this race. But I mean, Invictus looks really tough, right? If he's the goods, he's the goods. Like I said, the family history of bleeding and coming off Lasix again gives me a little bit of a pause. But when Serengeti Empress won the Oaks, you were still allowed to run on Lasix in those races. So she was bleeding through Lasix when she had those bleeding problems. I believe it was the uh, what's the Fairgrounds prep for the Oaks?
The Fairgrounds Oaks.
Fairgrounds Oaks, yeah, because I think she finished like 7th or 8th in that race,
She
right?
ran a
And
clunker at some
yeah,
point. Yeah.
but um, but obviously, I mean, her Oaks race, man, that was my first big hit. That was my first big hit. I had hit the pick 4 for $1 to Serengeti Empress. I only used 2 horses. I used Serengeti Empress because of the work report on her, and because Mark wouldn't shut up about her. So shout out Mark. But
Mark
um,
catching a good stray. That's a
yeah,
first.
I know. And oh, was it Bellafina was the other horse I used
Delafino
in that
was in
race?
season, as it turned out. And that's one of those things where, the Adam Sandler gif of things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday.
I mean, she ran, I think, fine. I think
She
she ran like
ran
4th or
fine.
something.
It's
Yeah.
just she was never going to have a chance with the way that she was acting before and during the race.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it was like 4 grand. I think I ended up hitting in that race,
Attaboy.
um, and it paid for my first trip to Saratoga, and it paid for a bottle of whiskey that was probably the most overrated bottle of whiskey I've ever had, and we'll share that later. But um, the key part to that pick 4 though was a works horse named Cummings that won some race and paid like I think it was like 20 to 1 or something, and that was kind of the linchpin to it. But that I remember um, that year the works report for some reason was just ridiculous. Every horse that had a great work won, and it would have been an all time great weekend for me if the Derby went slightly different. However, we are going to move on here to the Preakness and race 5. This is going to be our closing leg of the late pick or the all dirt pick 5 here. And if you're still with us, thank you. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. On the bottom, hit all the buttons, and obviously we'll be live Thursday. We'll be talking about the Pimlico, late pick 5 here for Preakness Day. And you'll get our in-depth thoughts on all the races there. We'll probably talk a little bit of Friday's Black Eyed Susan card as well. But yeah, your morning line favorite is going to be the 2 journalism. Andrew, I've seen some talk, or I saw some comments on Twitter, particularly about journalism losing, and being like, basically saying like, told you he wasn't the goods or something like that, or like I like and maybe it's just me like coming getting older and wiser, because I feel like I always would say that, right? Like you know uh some horse that's a real short price ends up running, you're running second. It's like, see, he was. I knew he was bad all along.
The word
I,
you use for horses like that is rat, Josh. The word you use is
I
rat.
yeah. But you know, I thought journalism ran fine. He ran a very very good race. Sovereignty just ran a much better race that day, and I don't really think that you can take too much away from journalism in defeat. Um, And yeah, I think that, looking at the pace scenario here and looking at the field, I just think that this sets up for journalism again, and I mean, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, won't be fooled again. I don't remember, but I'm back in on the journalism train on here. And Andrew, I know you're a big fan as well.
Lone, you look at this race in every possible way, it sets up for journalism. Goal oriented is going to want to certainly be forward from the rail. I don't think he needs the lead, but I do think he's going to need to get out of the gate. American Promise, we know, wants to go. Pay Billy wants to go. River Timms can go. Clever Again wants to go. Gosker has a little bit of early speed. I don't want to say it looks like Meltdown, but it certainly looks like an honest pace. And if they wind up going slower than 47 to the half, I'll be shocked. I think they're going to wind up going pretty quick. I think journalism, if he's right, is absolutely the horse to beat. If he runs back to the Kentucky Derby effort, I think the question is how much he wins by. I think it's a matter of him getting that exact trip. I think he's got enough speed to sit a little closer than he did on Kentucky Derby Day. I think he's got enough speed to work out his own trip. There's a much smaller field for sure. And if there's ridiculous dumb money like there seems to be in the Preakness win pool seemingly every year, and he winds up being greater than even money, that hits me as an overlay. What I will say is I think there's value behind him because I want no part of Sandman in this spot. He's a horse that seems to find trouble. Newsflash, tappets are crazy. We need to learn that. The horses that I like underneath, one of them is sort of logical and one of them's a bomb. River Timms showed a new dimension last time when he rated in the Bluegrass. He was beaten less than a length. The race two back, he was second beaten a neck by Sovereignty. Now, that race two back, he was supposed to win. At the top of the stretch, it looked like he was home and cooled out. Sovereignty came and got him. But I think River Timms is coming into this race very well. I like the fact that immediately after the Bluegrass, even though River Timms may have had enough points to get into the Derby field, Pletcher said, no, we're bypassing the Derby. We're waiting for the Preakness. There's a long track record of trainers being rewarded for doing right by their horses. And I think River Timms, at a minimum, is going to fire his best shot. I don't think it's good enough to beat journalism. I do think it may well be good enough to get second. Another horse that I think may be good enough to run second is 20 to 1 on the morning line. I don't think we're going to get that price, but I certainly hope we do, in the form of number 9, Gosker. Gosker won the Lexington last time out in his third lifetime start. This is a runner that has room to improve. I like the fact that the pedigree says mud will not be a problem if there is indeed a wet track. It certainly seems like he's a grinder and the added distance isn't going to hurt him too much. And I like the fact that we're seeing Luis Saez ride for Brendan Walsh. That's a very good tandem. He's got enough speed to be able to sit close and work out a stalking trip. If you're playing exactas and trifectas, use this horse underneath at a pretty big price. I'm not saying he's good enough to win. He probably isn't. But if you're playing exactas and tries, don't let this horse be the one that beats you.
Yeah, I really think that journalism is going to be, I don't know, anything above even money. I think is win bettable at this point. The only other horse I have, and I have an A next to, is the one goal oriented, and it's tough, right? This is a 2 day wager. So I'm thinking about this in the way I'm thinking about a 2 day wager, right? I'm gonna assume that there's gonna be moisture in the track, right? And when I look at goal oriented, this is a horse that on that sloppy Churchill Downs track ran a great race. Went wire to wire in that race, and it seemed to really like the slop. So I think that if the track does come up sloppy, like I said, not that journalism ran a bad race. Obviously, he ran very well in the Derby. I think goal oriented. Yeah, is the horse that's already kind of proven itself in the slop, and so is I'm going to be using. Also, we talk about big days and the propensity for sometimes these big days to really be speed favoring. I'll take a shot just in case as a backup with the inside drawn speed here in the one goal oriented. Flavian Pratt gets aboard. Um, it keeps the mount here. For Bob. Yeah, I just think that if someone is going to upset, it could be goal oriented. A la what was the horse, National Treasure, that Bob won the Preakness with a couple years back. Goal oriented kind of got that same. I mean, I thought Rodriguez was going to be the same thing, and lo and behold, another future wager down in the down. Yeah.
I'd be pouring something out if there was anything in this cup, Josh.
Oh, damn that Mark Midland. He's the one who talked me into it.
Isn't it good
Um,
to have someone to blame, Josh?
but yeah, like I'm just gonna use the 1 and 2. That's all I need in this spot. And I have them both as A's just because, hey, if I get to this leg, and I eat a couple B's, I want to make sure that I'm live to whatever I
Mhm.
think. But those are gonna be the only two horses I'm gonna use in this spot.
So I understand you using goal oriented because, especially if you wind up getting a price or two home early, if that's the horse you don't want to knock you out, I understand. I just think the last race was inflated a bit on figures. And I say that having loved that horse on Kentucky Derby Day. If you watched our Derby preview show, you know that was my best bet of the day. I was not at all shocked that the odds came crashing down. But I look at that race and I think goal oriented got an absolutely ideal trip. That race was the one where there was a pull up out of the race by a Dale
Mm.
Roman's horse that would have challenged goal oriented for the lead. I don't think goal oriented is an early speed horse. I think he was just fast enough to find himself on the front end. And he got a picture perfect trip over a very sloppy track, never once had to take dirt. And even so, was all out to beat Hypness by 3/4 of a length. Hypness, I haven't been overly impressed by. I liked him in one of the earlier starts on the Louisiana Road to the Derby, but I don't think that field was all that great. I just think he's going to be a bit of an underlay come post time. And would I be shocked if goal oriented ran well? No. It's a Bob Baffert on Preakness Day, right? And I understand why you're using him if you're using that as a defensive horse. I like that idea of a defensive horse more than using a chalk as a defensive horse. But even so, the way that I structured my ticket, I'm spreading in earlier legs. If journalism runs his race, the race is for second.
All right, Andrew, and I got our tickets here. You have a slightly skinnier play than me here.
Yeah, and a lot of that is just because I finished single, right? I'm starting going six deep in the first leg because, to be honest, I don't have much in the way of a strong opinion. I'm just trying to get out of there. Two deep in the Pimlico Special, and then we're on to races on Saturday. Three deep in the Chick Lang, singling in the Sir Barton, and singling in the Preakness with journalism. And the way that I'm looking at this is I'm hoping that we wind up getting at least one decent price home in the first three legs. We do that, we knock a couple of tickets out. All of a sudden, we're live to now at least 200, 250 with journalism in the pick five. We do that, all of a sudden, journalism as an even money shot is a double digit price. We had to get a little creative with how we did it, and it's not sexy, but the math checks out. So that was the idea behind that. I understand you using goal oriented defensively. I just put it this way: if journalism doesn't win, I think four or five horses could.
Yep, and so Andrew's ticket is 1, 4, 5, 6, 9, 12, with 1, 9, with 4, 6, 7, with 6, with 2. That's an $18 play. And yeah, I'm gonna be kind of skinny early here with just using the 5 and 6 in leg one, a little bit more spread with the 1, 3, 8, 9 in leg two, 4, 7, 8 with 6, 9 with 1, 2. That's a $48 play. And Andrew, my goodness, guess what? We
Do
have
we
a
have one?
consensus ticket.
We have a consensus ticket.
Yep. And that's 5, 6 with 1, 9 with 4, 7 with 6 with 2. It's $4 play. You can play this for less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
I got to tell you, that's some good work for as differently as we view a lot of sequences here. It sounds like we see it pretty similarly here, and I don't think that consensus ticket has any real shockers on it either.
Yep. Anything else about you want to talk about on maybe Friday or Saturday's card?
So Friday and Saturday at Pimlico, obviously big days. I'll have tip sheets available over on winnersandwhiners.com for those 2 days. They're up for $15 a piece. We've got betting strategies for the Black Eyed Susan and the Preakness, as well as 3 spot plays for the undercard races. Again, Friday's undercard, very, very interesting. I think there's room for a lot of prices on the Friday undercard. So if you're looking for prices, if you're looking for ways to build the bankroll before Preakness, I've got you covered. You can use the promo code CHAMP20 for 20% off any individual item in that handicapping store. I'll have those links up on my socials as well. In the meantime, I'll also be on radio in the Albany area on Friday with our friends Levac and Gaz. They also interview Matthew DeSantis, who will undeniably say something about the weather. He thinks I'm a ninny because I bring up the fact that, hey, it's going to rain. We might be off the turf. If you want to get Matthew DeSantis angry, talk about the weather. It really makes him crazy. We love that guy, and that's the reason it works. But at any rate, it's a good week to be a horse player. There's a lot of opportunities to make some money. And like I mentioned, this sequence has a 12% takeout. So if you're a takeout snob and you're looking for efficient ways to use your money, here you go. Play it.
And that's going to do it for us here on Drinking Champagne. Obviously, check us out at onthewronglead.com, at wrong_lead on Twitter. I am at Cherry Drink. Andrew is at Andrew Champagne. Winnersandwhiners.com, andrewchampagne.com, Hong Kong feed. I don't know. Say, what is it? Say your name and you'll appear.
And he appears. Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a good weekend. Let's make some money.